Alex's hand didn't tremble as she approached table 7 with the champagne bottle. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this restaurant. Not serving this table. Not within breathing distance of the man whose family might have ordered her brother's death. Il Santuario glittered like a jewel box designed to hide corpses. Crystal chandeliers fractured light across white linen. The air smelled of truffle oil and expensive perfume, and something her survival instincts recognized as danger wearing a tuxedo. Mattia Greco sat at the table's center like carved marble. Dark suit tailored with precision. Black hair swept back from features that understood beauty and cruelty weren't opposites. His stillness was the most unsettling thing. While his fiancée laughed and her parents gestured, he simply watched. Calculated. Alex had seen predators before. This man wasn't just dangerous. He was inevitability in Italian wool. She poured champagne, her server's smile fixed in place. The kind of expression that said, "I'm here to refill your glass and I don't exist beyond that." 5 years of practice had made her an expert at disappearing in plain sight. Valentina Russo's hand rested possessively on Mattia's forearm. The diamond on her finger could have purchased a small country. Everything about her screamed old money merging with new power. "Isn't this romantic?" Valentina's voice dripped honey and poison. "My parents flew in from Boston just for tonight." Senator Russo beamed. Silver hair, expensive suit, hands that had probably signed bills and death warrants with equal ease. His wife matched him in calculated warmth. Designer dress, perfect posture. Eyes that assessed Alex for exactly 2 seconds before dismissing her as irrelevant. Then Alex saw the tattoo on Valentina's inner wrist. 3 stars arranged in a triangle. A dagger through the center. The Costa Syndicate mark. Spanish Mafia. Alex's entire body went cold. That symbol. She'd seen it in Noah's files, circled in red ink, connected by arrows to documents about territory disputes and political corruption and bodies that washed up in the East River. Her brother had been investigating the Costa Syndicate's infiltration of New York's political infrastructure when he died, had traced connections between Senator Russo's campaign finances and Spanish oligarchs with ties to organized crime, and now his daughter was about to marry into New York's most notorious crime family. Not a merger. A hostile takeover. Valentina's hand drifted below the table. Casual. Natural. Her fingers found something in the folds of her dress. Something small and hard and unmistakably metallic. Across the restaurant, a man in a server's uniform stood too still near the kitchen entrance, another by the emergency exit, their posture wrong, their attention too focused on table 7. This wasn't an engagement dinner. It was a kill box. "Careful," Mattia's voice cut through her panic. Deep, controlled, edged with violence just beneath his surface. "That's a $1,000 bottle." Alex's hand steadied through sheer force of will. "My apologies, sir." His eyes locked onto hers. Black as midnight, missing absolutely nothing. She felt pinned in place by that gaze. Dissected, evaluated, catalogued as either threat or irrelevance in the space of a heartbeat. "You're new." Not a question. An observation. 4 months, sir." His head tilted fractionally. The movement reminded her of a wolf scenting prey. "What's your name?" "Alex." The lie came automatically. Everything else about her identity had been buried 5 years ago when Noah died, and she'd learned that asking the wrong questions got you killed. "Alex." He tested the word like tasting wine. "You seem nervous." Valentina's laugh cut through the tension. "Mattia, darling, you're making her uncomfortable. Let the poor girl work." But he didn't look away. "Am I making you uncomfortable, Alex?" "No, sir. Just focused on providing excellent service." Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe. Or recognition of a lie well told. Outside the window, across the street, a flash of movement on a rooftop. Sniper. Alex's training from another life kicked in. Noah had taught her to read situations. Violence always announced itself in the seconds before it happened. You just had to know what to watch for. She had maybe 10 seconds before the world exploded. Mattia raised his glass to toast Senator Russo, his expression calm, completely unaware that he was about to die. Alex moved on instinct, stepped close enough to pour his wine, close enough to smell bergamot and smoke cologne, close enough to see the faint scar along his jawline. She leaned in, her lips nearly brushing his ear, her voice barely a whisper. "Run. Now." For one heartbeat, he went absolutely still. Then his hand shot out and grabbed her wrist with crushing force, his body coiled like a spring about to release. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "Who sent you?" The window shattered. "Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we start, go ahead and subscribe, like and share where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see our little storytelling family stretch across the world. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you give helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories together. So find your quiet place, settle in, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before." Mattia moved like violence given form. He flipped the table with one hand while dragging Alex down with the other. Crystal exploded. Wine splattered like blood. Valentina's mother screamed. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. The fake servers produced automatic weapons. The senator's security detail returned fire. Chaos bloomed like roses in candlelight. Beautiful and terrible and absolutely lethal. Mattia's hand never left Alex's wrist. He pulled her toward the kitchen, his body shielding hers, his movements precise despite the pandemonium. Guards materialized beside them, forming a protective wedge, pushing through the screaming crowd. The kitchen was all stainless steel and fire, and shouting chefs diving for cover. Mattia didn't slow. He kicked open a service door and pulled Alex into a narrow corridor that smelled like garbage and rain. Behind them, the restaurant sounded like a war zone. Glass shattering, people screaming, the sharp crack of gunfire echoing off marble walls. "Move." His voice was cold as winter. His hand still gripped her wrist like iron. She stumbled after him, her server shoes slipping on wet pavement, her mind trying to process what had just happened. They burst into an alley. Rain hammered down from a black sky. A car waited, engine running, doors open. One of the guards took the driver's seat. Mattia shoved Alex into the back and followed, slamming the door as the vehicle peeled out with enough force to slam her against the leather. The guard in the passenger seat spoke rapid Italian into his phone. Blood seeped through his jacket sleeve. Mattia leaned forward, completely focused, giving orders in that same controlled voice he'd used asking for wine. "Who sent you?" He turned that predatory attention back to Alex. His hand now held a gun. When had he drawn it? Pointed casually at her midsection. "Answer carefully. I just saved your life by listening to you. Give me a reason not to reconsider that decision." Rain hammered the windshield as the car screamed through Manhattan's side streets. Alex's dress uniform clung to her skin where Mattia had dragged her through the downpour. Her wrist throbbed where his fingers had gripped hard enough to leave marks. "No one sent me." Her voice came out steadier than her heartbeat. "I recognized them, the Russos. I knew what was about to happen." "How?" The word landed like a knife. "Because I've seen that setup before." She met his eyes, refusing to flinch. "Your fiancée had a weapon. Her security weren't security. They were positioned for a kill box. And there was a sniper on the building across the street." Mattia's expression didn't change. He glanced at the guard in the passenger seat. "Confirm." The man listened to his phone, then nodded. 3 shooters on the adjacent rooftop. Professional-grade rifles. Valentina Russo is missing. Her family claims they were attacked too. Senators already spinning it for the media. Attempted assassination by a rival family. Of course he is. Mattia's jaw tightened fractionally, the first real emotion Alex had seen crack through that marble facade. How many dead? 2 civilians. 3 of theirs. 1 of ours. The guard's voice dropped. Luca didn't make it. Silence filled the car like a physical presence. The driver took another corner hard enough to make the tires scream. Through the rain-streaked window, Alex caught glimpses of the city blurring past. Neon signs reflecting in puddles, late-night crowds scattering. Mattia's attention returned to her with surgical focus. "You knew about the snipers. About the positioning. That's not casual observation. That's training. I pay attention." Her throat felt like sandpaper. "It keeps me alive." Paying attention doesn't teach you tactical assessment. His thumb traced the gun's safety, a casual gesture that carried more threat than most people's direct violence. Who are you really, Alex? The name she'd given him felt suddenly fragile. A paper shield against a man who probably had resources to peel away every identity she'd built in the last 5 years. I'm a waitress trying to survive in a city that eats people like me. She held his gaze. I saw something wrong and I made a choice. That's all. No. He leaned closer. The gun never wavered. That's not all. You recognized Valentina's family specifically. You identified their security as hostile before the first shot was fired. And you warned me instead of running. Those aren't the actions of a waitress trying to survive. Thunder cracked overhead. The car turned onto a bridge. Below them, the East River churned black and lethal. My brother was a journalist. The truth came out before she could stop it. He investigated political corruption. 5 years ago, he was killed in a car accident that wasn't an accident. Before he died, he sent me files. Evidence. Connections between the Russo family and Spanish organized crime. I've been trying to understand what he found ever since. Mattia's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. What was your brother's name? Noah Madison. Recognition flashed across his face. Brief but unmistakable. The guard in the passenger seat turned to look at her with new interest. Noah Madison. Mattia's voice went very quiet. The investigative reporter who was researching my family's connections to political corruption, who died when his car went off a bridge during a rainstorm. Yes. Alex's chest felt tight. You knew him? I knew of him. Mattia lowered the gun fractionally. He reached out to my people 6 months before he died. Said he had evidence of corruption that went to the highest levels of New York's power structure. Said he wanted to make a deal. Information in exchange for protection. What happened? My father refused. Said Madison was a liability. That cooperating with journalists was bad for business. Mattia's jaw tightened. 3 months later, your brother drove off the Queensboro Bridge in a storm. The investigation ruled it an accident. Very neat. Very convenient. He didn't drink. Alex's voice broke, despite her effort to control it. Noah would never have driven drunk. I know. Mattia's tone carried something that might have been regret. Which is why I always assumed someone killed him. The car pulled into an underground garage. Concrete pillars stretched into shadow. The driver cut the engine, but nobody moved. Rain drummed on the roof like fingers tapping out a countdown. Mattia studied her for a long moment. Then he holstered his gun. You saved my life tonight, Alex Madison. That buys you temporary asylum. But understand this. You're not safe anymore. Valentina's people saw you warn me. Security footage probably caught it. Which means both the Costa Syndicate and my own organization are going to want answers about who you are and what you know. Then why keep me alive? Because you're the only person in this city who told me the truth when lying would have been safer. His voice dropped to something almost gentle. That makes you either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which yet. He opened the car door, extended his hand to Alex. She stared at it for a heartbeat. This offering from a man whose world had killed her brother. Then she took it. Because the alternative was dying alone in the rain. Welcome to my war, Alex Madison. His voice carried across the garage like a promise and a threat. Let's hope you survive it. The safe house was a penthouse in a building that didn't officially exist on any city records. Mattia led her through a service elevator that required 3 different codes and a palm print to operate. The guard, whose name she learned was Marco, swept each floor as they ascended, weapon ready. Alex's clothes had dried into uncomfortable stiffness. Her feet ached from running in server shoes. Her wrist throbbed where Mattia's grip had left finger-shaped bruises. But she kept her spine straight and her expression neutral, because showing weakness in this world was the fastest way to become prey. The penthouse opened into a space that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan's glittering skyline. Minimalist furniture in shades of black and gray. Everything pristine and impersonal and carefully designed to reveal nothing about the man who owned it. Sit. Mattia gestured to a leather couch. Don't touch anything. Don't move unless I tell you to. Marco will be outside the door. Am I a guest or a prisoner? You're alive. His tone suggested that should be answer enough. Stay that way by following instructions. He disappeared into another room. Alex heard water running, drawers opening and closing, the quiet efficiency of someone who'd performed this post-crisis routine 100 times before. She moved to the window despite his orders. Below, the city sprawled in neon and shadow, millions of people living their lives, completely unaware that in a restaurant across town, people had died tonight. You don't follow instructions well. Mattia's voice came from behind her. He'd changed into dark jeans and a black shirt, his wetsuit replaced. He carried a first aid kit in one hand and 2 glasses of amber liquid in the other. That's going to be a problem if you want to survive the next 48 hours. I needed to see the city, to remind myself it's still there. Why wouldn't it be? Because sometimes when your world explodes, you forget other people's worlds keep spinning. She accepted the glass he offered. What is this? Whiskey. Drink it. You're in shock whether you realize it or not. She took a sip. The burn grounded her, pulled her back into her body. Mattia set the first aid kit on the coffee table and gestured to the couch. Alex sat this time, too exhausted to argue. He knelt in front of her and reached for her wrist. She flinched reflexively. He paused, his dark eyes meeting hers with unexpected patience. I need to see the bruising. I might have grabbed you too hard in the chaos. The gentleness in his voice was somehow more unsettling than the gun had been. She extended her arm. His fingers were careful now, turning her wrist to examine the purple marks blooming across her skin. His touch was clinical, professional, but she felt it everywhere. Nothing broken. He applied gel with surprising care. You'll bruise, but it'll fade in a few days. Any other injuries? Just my pride. And my career. I'm guessing waitressing at Il Santuario isn't an option anymore. His mouth quirked fractionally. No. You're effectively dead to your old life as of tonight. Alex the waitress ceased to exist the moment you warned me. The question is who you become next. The television mounted on the wall suddenly flickered to life. Marco must have turned it on from somewhere. News footage filled the screen. Shaky cell phone video from Il Santuario. The chaos of the attack. People screaming, glass shattering. And there, crystal clear, was Alex leaning close to Mattia seconds before the shooting started. The news anchor's voice cut through. Authorities are seeking this woman for questioning in connection with tonight's attack on the Greco family. Sources close to the investigation suggest she may have been working with the assailants. Mattia muted it. They're already spinning the narrative. By morning, you'll be a terrorist. A radical. The Costa Syndicate's very good at controlling stories. Alex's reflection stared back from the dark TV screen. A stranger's face. Someone dangerous. Someone hunted. Everything she'd worked so hard to avoid for 5 years. Materialized in a single evening. I can't go back. The words came out hollow. To my apartment, my other jobs, anyone who knew me. It's all gone. Yes. Mattia moved beside her, his shoulder nearly touching hers. Welcome to being dead. It's lonely at first. Then it becomes freedom, because when you don't exist, you can become anyone. Is that what you are? A ghost? I've been dying by inches since I was old enough to understand what my family really did. His voice dropped to something raw. Tonight was just making it official. Alex turned to him, really looked at him for the first time since they'd fled the restaurant. Saw the exhaustion beneath the control. The grief he was too disciplined to show. The weight of carrying a legacy built on corpses. I don't trust anyone who looks calm in the dark, she said quietly. But you don't look calm. You look like you belong to it. Like the darkness is the only place you've ever been able to breathe. Maybe because you're there with me. His hand came up to cup her face. The gesture achingly gentle despite the violence humming beneath his skin. Maybe because for the first time in my life, I'm not alone in it. His thumb traced her cheekbone. She should pull away. Should remember that this man's family had refused to help her brother. Should protect herself the way she'd learned to protect herself for 5 years. Instead, she leaned into his touch. Because sometimes survival wasn't about being smart. Sometimes it was about choosing which risks were worth taking. "You're not safe anymore, Waitress," he murmured, his forehead touching hers. "You just joined my war." Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something dangerous sparked between them. Two damaged people recognizing each other in the dark, choosing alliance over safety, choosing each other despite every reason not to. And somewhere in the city, the people who'd tried to kill them were already planning their next move. The safe house felt different in the gray light of almost dawn. Less like a sanctuary and more like a cage lined with expensive things. Alex stood at the window watching the city transform from darkness to hesitant mourning. While behind her, Mattia's team worked in that focused silence that came from years of operating in shadows. She couldn't shake the image from the security footage. Noah falling, Don Greco walking away. The casual brutality of it. The way her brother's body had crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. 5 years. She'd spent 5 years running from a truth she hadn't even known existed. Had built an entire identity around being invisible when the real monster had been hiding in plain sight the whole time. Her reflection stared back from the glass. Same face, different woman. The Alex who'd poured champagne at Il Santuario last night had died somewhere between the gunfire and the revelation. What remained was something harder. Something that tasted like her brother's memory and her own carefully buried rage. Behind her, she heard Mattia giving orders in Italian. His voice had that same controlled precision it always carried, but she could hear the fractures underneath, could recognize the sound of someone holding themselves together through sheer force of will, because falling apart wasn't an option yet. The specialist with purple hair approached. "Miss Madison? I found something else in the files. Something separate from the financial records." Alex turned. "Show me." The woman led her to a laptop displaying a folder labeled Project Noah. Alex's breath caught. She clicked it open with fingers that wanted to shake but didn't. Documents filled the screen. Correspondence between her brother and someone identified only as M.G., meeting notes, surveillance photos, a carefully constructed investigation into the Russo family's political connections. And at the bottom, a contract signed by both Noah Madison and Mattia Greco. Alex read it once, then again, then a third time because her brain refused to process what her eyes were seeing. Noah had been working for Mattia, not investigating him, working with him. As a paid informant providing intelligence on Senator Russo's criminal activities in exchange for protection and financial support. The room tilted. She gripped the edge of the desk. "When?" Her voice came out rough. "When was this signed?" The specialist checked the metadata. 8 months before your brother died. 8 months. Noah had spent 8 months secretly working with the Greco family, had taken their money, had provided them with information, had trusted them to keep him safe, and then Don Greco had murdered him anyway. "You knew." Alex's voice cut through the room like broken glass. Every head turned. Mattia's eyes found hers across the space. "You knew my brother. You worked with him. And you let me stand here thinking. I didn't know until tonight." Mattia moved toward her, slow, careful, like approaching something wounded and dangerous. "My father kept this from me. Noah reached out to me directly. Yes. But I thought the deal fell through. I thought he'd changed his mind. I didn't know my father had intercepted our arrangement. Didn't know he'd taken the meeting himself." "You're lying." But even as she said it, Alex wasn't sure. Because the devastation on Mattia's face when that video had played, that hadn't been fake. That had been the sound of someone's world shattering. "I'm not." He stopped an arm's length away, close enough to touch, far enough to run. Noah was supposed to be my informant, my way of building a case against the Costa Syndicate infiltration of New York politics. He was going to help me take down Senator Russo from the inside, while maintaining plausible deniability for both of us. It was a clean play, a smart play, the kind of alliance that could have changed everything. Then what happened? My father found out. Mattia's jaw tightened. He'd been monitoring my communications, saw the contract, realized I was building something independent of his control. So he intercepted Noah's next message, set up a meeting, and eliminated the problem. The problem being my brother. The problem being me trying to operate outside his authority. His voice dropped. Noah died because I thought I could outmaneuver my father. Because I believed I was smart enough to build something better while he wasn't paying attention. I was wrong. And your brother paid for my arrogance. Alex wanted to rage at him. Wanted to blame him for Noah's death because anger was easier than grief, and having a target was simpler than accepting that her brother had died in the crossfire of someone else's family drama. But she'd seen the video. Had watched Don Greco pull that trigger. Had heard him say that Noah was a liability. Mattia hadn't killed her brother, but his father had. And in some ways that was worse. Because it meant the man standing in front of her was both her enemy's son and her brother's intended ally. Was both complicit in the system that had destroyed Noah and the only person with the power to burn that system down. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice cracked despite her effort to control it. When you figured out who I was, when you realized I was Noah Madison's sister. Why didn't you say something? Because I didn't know if I could trust you. His honesty was brutal. I didn't know if you were working with the Costa Syndicate. If you'd been sent to infiltrate my organization. If your warning at the restaurant was genuine or part of a larger play. I had to be sure before I revealed how much your brother meant to my plans. And now I know Don Greco is still alive. Mattia's voice went cold. Now I know he's been orchestrating both families from behind the scenes. Now I know the engagement to Valentina was his idea. The assassination attempt was his test. He wanted to see if I'd survive, if I was strong enough to be worthy of inheriting his empire. And when I did survive, when you warned me, he pivoted to plan B, which is making me prove my loyalty by choosing the family over everything else. Over justice. Over truth. Over... He stopped himself. Over anything that might make me weak in his eyes. Alex moved to the window again. Dawn had fully broken now. The city looked clean in the early light. Innocent. Like it had no idea what kind of rot lived in its shadows. There's something else. Salvatore appeared with a tablet. The encrypted drive had another layer. Financial records going back 20 years. Don Greco's been funding political assassinations with Russo money since before Senator Russo was even in office. The Costa Syndicate connection isn't new. It's been there from the beginning. They built this alliance a generation ago. He pulled up files, dates, names, amounts, a carefully constructed paper trail showing how two families, one Italian, one Spanish, had slowly merged their operations until the distinction between them barely existed. And at the center of it all, orchestrating every move, was Don Greco. He's not just a crime lord. Alex's voice was hollow. He's the architect. He built this entire structure. The Russos, the Costa Syndicate, the political corruption, all of it traces back to him. Yes. Mattia's reflection appeared beside hers in the glass. My father doesn't just run the Greco family. He runs New York. Every family. Every politician, every dirty cop and corrupt judge. He's the spider at the center of the web. And he's been training me my entire life to take his place. But you don't want it. I want to burn it to ash. The words came out quiet but absolute. I want to destroy everything he built. Every alliance, every corrupt deal, every blood-soaked dollar. I want to salt the earth where his empire stood and build something clean on top of it. That's a nice dream. Alex turned to face him. But dreams don't survive contact with reality. Your father's too powerful, too connected. He's spent decades building this system. You think you can just tear it down because you're tired of it? No. His eyes held hers. I think we can tear it down. Together. Because you have something I don't. What's that? Nothing left to lose. His hand came up to cup her face. The gesture achingly gentle despite the violence humming beneath his skin. You've already lost your brother. Your old life. Your safety. You're not afraid of consequences because the worst has already happened. That makes you the most dangerous person in this room. Or it makes me reckless. But she didn't pull away from his touch. Didn't step back. Stayed rooted in place while something dangerous sparked between them. Then be reckless with me. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Help me finish what Noah started. Help me expose every corrupt connection, every dirty politician, every crime family pretending to be legitimate. Help me burn down my father's legacy and build something that would make your brother proud. And then what? After the burning? After the blood? What happens to us? I don't know. His forehead touched hers. I've never thought past survival before. Never imagined a future that didn't involve dying in my father's shadow. But standing here with you, standing here knowing that you chose to save me when letting me die would have been safer. I want to find out. Alex closed her eyes, let herself feel the weight of his presence, the warmth of his hand, the steady rhythm of his breathing. Let herself imagine, just for a moment, what it might feel like to stop running, to stop hiding, to stop living like every day could be her last. Then she opened her eyes and met his gaze. Your father dies by your hand. Her voice was steel. Not a soldier, not an accident, not some coward's poison. You look him in the eyes and you make him understand what he took from you. From Noah. From everyone he's ever destroyed. That's non-negotiable. Something flickered in Mattia's expression. Respect, maybe. Or recognition of someone who understood that some debts could only be paid in blood. Agreed. His hand fell away. But first we need leverage. Evidence so damning that even if we die, the truth survives. Insurance that keeps us breathing long enough to get close to him. The files are a start. But we need more. We need witnesses, testimony. Something that connects him directly to Noah's murder in a way that can't be dismissed or buried. The specialist raised her hand. The video file had metadata, security camera designation, location stamps. If we can access the original system, we might find other footage, maybe audio, maybe proof of premeditation. That parking garage is owned by one of my father's shell companies. Mattia was already moving, already planning. Security would have been wiped. But the backup servers, those might still have copies. They're stored off-site, in a location only 3 people know about. Let me guess. Alex followed him. You're one of them. I'm his heir. I know where all the bodies are buried. His smile was sharp, literally and figuratively. The question is whether we can reach the servers before he realizes we're hunting for them. Salvatore was already pulling up maps. The backup facility is in Red Hook, Warehouse District. Technically abandoned but maintained as a data storage site. Limited security, mostly automated systems, which means my father will know the moment we access it. Mattia studied the screen. He'll have built-in alarms, fail-safes, ways to ensure he knows when someone's digging through his archives. So we create a distraction. Alex's mind raced. Something big enough to pull his attention away from a quiet data breach. What kind of distraction? She looked at him. At the man whose engagement dinner had turned into a bloodbath. At the heir to an empire built on corpses. At the only person in New York who might actually be crazy enough to do what needed doing. Me. The word came out clear. Certain. I'm the distraction. The waitress who warned you. The woman whose face is all over the news as a person of interest in the attack. I'm exactly the kind of problem your father needs to address personally. Absolutely not. Mattia's voice went hard. You're not putting yourself in his crosshairs. I'm already there. We both know he's looking for me. That every minute I'm alive is a threat to his carefully constructed narrative. So we give him what he wants. We let him find me. And then he kills you. Not if I'm wearing a wire. Not if I can get him talking. Not if I can make him confess on tape. Alex moved closer. Your father's arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable. If I show up scared and desperate and willing to make a deal, he'll want to gloat. Criminals always want their victims to know how smart they were, how thoroughly they've been beaten. You're talking about using yourself as bait in a trap that might not work. I'm talking about finishing what my brother started. Her voice dropped. Noah tried to expose your father and died for it. I'm not making the same mistake. I'm going in prepared, protected, with backup and an exit strategy. But I am going in, because this ends now, tonight, before more people die. Silence filled the room. The team watched. Salvatore's expression suggested he thought she was insane but respected the strategy. The specialist looked torn between admiration and horror. Mattia stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Salvatore. How fast can you get a wire set up that won't be detected? 2 hours, maybe less if I call in favors. Do it. And get me blueprints of my father's estate. Every entrance, every exit, every blind spot in his security. If this goes wrong, I want extraction options. He looked back at Alex. You're not doing this alone. I'll be close. The moment something feels wrong, you abort and I come in. He'll recognize you. Not if I'm properly disguised. His mouth curved into something cold. My father taught me how to disappear. Time to use those lessons against him. The next 2 hours blurred into preparation. Salvatore returned with equipment. A wire so small it could be sewn into Alex's clothing, nearly impossible to detect. A panic button disguised as a button on her jacket. A tracker no bigger than a grain of rice that could be swallowed if necessary. You press this, we come in guns hot. Salvatore demonstrated the panic button. No hesitation, no questions. You signal distress and we extract you by any means necessary. Understood. Mattia appeared in different clothes. Worn jeans, a leather jacket, hair styled differently, contacts that changed his eye color from dark brown to hazel, a slight prosthetic that altered his nose shape. Not a perfect disguise, but enough to create doubt. Enough to let him get close without immediate recognition. Your father will know eventually. Alex studied him. Even disguised. He knows how you move, how you think. By the time he figures it out, you'll already be wired and talking. The evidence will already be recording. Mattia checked his weapon. And if he tries to hurt you, disguise won't matter. I'll put a bullet between his eyes regardless of consequences. The plan crystallized. Alex would surrender herself at a known Greco front, a restaurant in Little Italy where Don Greco conducted business. She'd claimed to have information about the Il Santuario attack, about who'd really orchestrated it. She'd play scared, desperate, willing to trade everything she knew for protection. Don Greco would take the meeting, because he was a predator who couldn't resist the opportunity to toy with his prey, because he'd want to know what she knew, because eliminating her would tie up a loose end. And while he was focused on her, while he was monologuing about his brilliance, the wire would be recording. Salvatore's team would be breaking into the Red Hook facility, and Mattia would be close enough to intervene if everything went wrong. It was a terrible plan. The kind of plan that could get everyone killed. But it was also the only plan that might actually work. Last chance to back out. Mattia stood by the door. The car was ready, the team positioned. The sun had fully risen, painting the city in gold that felt like a lie. We do this. There's no going back. My father dies or we do. Those are the only outcomes. Alex thought about Noah, about 5 years of running, about living in the shadows while the people who'd destroyed her family walked free, about the security footage showing her brother's murder, about the cold, casual way Don Greco had pulled that trigger. I'm not backing out. She adjusted the wire, felt its slight weight against her skin, a technological ghost recording the truth. I'm finishing this. For Noah, for Antonio, for everyone your father has ever destroyed. Then let's go to war. Mattia opened the door. They descended into the city, into the bright morning that felt wrong for what they were about to do. Down through the underground garage, into separate vehicles because arriving together would raise suspicion. Alex rode with Salvatore. Mattia took his own car with Marco. The rest of the team scattered to their positions. Digital infiltration, physical backup, escape routes mapped and memorized. The city hummed around them. People going to work, living normal lives, completely unaware that in a restaurant in Little Italy, a woman was about to sit down with a monster and try to make him confess to murder. You're braver than your brother. Salvatore's voice was quiet. Noah was smart, dedicated, but he approached this like an investigation, like gathering evidence was enough. You understand what he didn't, that some fights require blood. I'm not brave. Alex watched Manhattan blur past. I'm just tired of being afraid. That's the same thing. The restaurant was called Bella Notte. Elegant. Expensive. The kind of place where deals were made over wine and pasta, while bodyguards stood discreetly by the exits. Alex had walked past it 100 times during her years hiding in the city. Had never imagined she'd walk through its doors. She entered alone, head high despite her racing heart. The maître d'hôtel looked her up and down with the kind of assessment that came from years of identifying threats. "I'm here to see Don Greco," her voice steady. "Tell him Alex Madison would like to discuss her brother's death." The man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or surprise that she'd be foolish enough to walk into the lion's den. "Wait here." He disappeared into the back. Alex stood in the entrance, acutely aware of the wire against her skin, of the panic button on her jacket, of Mattia somewhere outside in a car with a gun and a willingness to die protecting her. The maître d'hôtel returned. "Don Greco will see you. Follow me." They moved through the restaurant, past tables where men in expensive suits ate breakfast and conducted business, past a kitchen where chefs worked with the kind of precision that suggested they knew their employer's reputation, through a private door into a section of the building that tourists never saw. The hallway was elegant. Artwork on the walls, thick carpet that muffled footsteps, the kind of space designed to make people feel simultaneously privileged and trapped. A door at the end opened. The maître d'hôtel gestured. "He's waiting." Alex stepped inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. The room was beautiful. Dark wood paneling, a fireplace despite the summer heat, leather chairs arranged around a table set for two. And at the head of the table, sitting like a king holding court, was Don Greco. He looked exactly like the man from the security footage. Silver hair, sharp features, eyes that assessed her with the casual calculation of someone who'd spent decades determining the value of human life. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Alex had made in 5 years. His hands were clean and manicured and had personally ended her brother's life. "Miss Madison." His voice was cultured, almost pleasant. "I've been expecting you. Please, sit. We have much to discuss." Alex moved to the chair across from him, sat with her spine straight and her hands folded in her lap. The wire pressed against her skin. Recording. Storing. Preserving every word. "You wanted to discuss your brother." Don Greco poured wine into 2 glasses. "A tragedy, his death. Such a promising young man. So dedicated to his work. It's rare to find that kind of passion anymore." "You killed him." The words came out flat. "In a parking garage, 8 months after he tried to make a deal with your son." Don Greco smiled. "I see you've been doing research. That's good. I appreciate thoroughness. It's a quality your brother had. Unfortunately, thoroughness without wisdom is just arrogance in disguise. He came to you for protection. He came to my son for protection. Because he thought Mattia was weak enough to be manipulated, soft enough to believe that exposing corruption was more important than family loyalty." The Don sipped his wine. "Noah was wrong. Mattia may have doubts, may have philosophical objections to how we conduct business. But he's still my son, still a Greco. And Grecos don't betray their blood, so you intercepted the deal. I eliminated a problem before it could metastasize." He leaned back. "Your brother had evidence of financial connections between my family and Senator Russo's political operations. Evidence of how we've used Costa Syndicate resources to maintain control over New York's infrastructure. Evidence that, if published, would have destabilized decades of carefully constructed alliances. Evidence that proved you're a criminal. Evidence that proved I'm successful." His correction was gentle, almost paternal. "There's a difference, Miss Madison. Criminals get caught. I've operated for 40 years without a single conviction, without even a credible investigation. That's not crime. That's empire building." Alex's hands wanted to shake. She forced them still. "You murdered my brother because he threatened your empire. I eliminated a liability because your brother didn't understand how power works. He thought information was leverage, that he could negotiate with me as an equal. That offering to exchange his research for protection made him valuable." Don Greco's expression hardened. "But information is only valuable if its possessor has the power to use it. Your brother had documentation. I had an organization capable of making him disappear. We were never negotiating from equal positions. You shot him in cold blood. I executed a threat to my family's survival. There's a difference." He leaned forward. "Your brother was going to publish his research. He had deadlines, editors waiting. He thought pressure would force me to cooperate. Instead, it forced me to act. 3 months after our meeting, his car went off a bridge. Unfortunate accident. Too much alcohol, wet roads, mechanical failure. The investigation found no evidence of foul play. Because you controlled the investigation. Because I control everything that matters in this city." His tone carried no boast. "Just statement of fact. The police commissioner reports to me. The mayor owes me favors. The federal judges who would hear any case against me are on my payroll. Your brother thought he could fight that with journalism, with truth, with moral superiority. He was naive. The Wire was recording every word, every casual admission of murder and corruption, every piece of evidence that would damn Don Greco in any honest court. But Alex barely heard it. Because sitting across from her brother's killer, listening to him explain Noah's death like it was a business transaction, something inside her cracked. All the careful control, all the 5 years of holding herself together through sheer force of will, all of it splintered into rage so pure it felt like dying. Her hand moved toward the panic button, not to press it, just to confirm it was there. That Mattia was close, that backup existed if she needed it. Don Greco noticed. His eyes tracked the movement. "Ah, you're wired. I wondered if you'd be foolish enough to try that." He gestured casually. 2 men materialized from corners Alex hadn't realized held shadows. Bodyguards, armed, professional. They moved toward her with the efficiency of people who'd done this 100 times. "Don't." Alex's voice came out steady despite her racing heart. "You touch me and Mattia Greco brings this building down around you. My son is currently sitting outside in a disguise he thinks I won't recognize." Don Greco smiled. "I've known he was there since the moment he parked. I've known about this entire operation since you walked into Il Santuario last night. Did you really think you could outmaneuver me? That you and my disappointing heir could topple an empire I've spent 40 years building?" The bodyguards reached her. Professional hands found the wire, pulled it free, crushed it under a heel, found the panic button, removed it, patted her down for additional devices with clinical efficiency. "Nothing else," one of them reported. "Good." Don Greco stood. "Miss Madison, I'm going to explain something your brother never understood. Power isn't about who has the most information. It's about who has the most control. You and Mattia thought you were hunting me, but I've been 3 steps ahead since the moment you decided to play hero at my son's engagement dinner." He moved to the window. Outside, the street looked normal. Morning traffic, pedestrians. Nothing suggesting violence was about to erupt. "I wanted Mattia tested. Wanted to see if he was strong enough to survive an assassination attempt. Wanted to know if he'd choose family or weakness when the moment came." Don Greco's reflection watched her from the glass. "Valentina Russo was my idea. The engagement, the dinner, all of it designed to force my son into becoming the man I need him to be. By having him murdered? By giving him an enemy to destroy, a betrayal to overcome, a fire to temper him into something useful." He turned. "But then you interfered. You warned him. You survived when you should have been collateral damage. And worst of all, you made him feel something besides ambition and rage. Made him believe he could be something besides his father's weapon. I made him realize he doesn't have to be you. No. You made him weak." Don Greco's voice dropped to something cold. "And I can't have a weak heir. Can't build a dynasty on a man who'd choose a woman over his family's survival. So I adjusted my plans. Let him think he was hunting me. Let him believe he could gather evidence and expose corruption. Let him fall for you so I could use you against him." Alex's throat tightened. "I'm bait. Your motivation." He smiled. "Because in approximately 10 minutes, my people are going to deliver you to a location where Mattia will have to choose. Save you or save himself. Kill me or let you die. Embrace his birthright or cling to the fantasy that he can be something better than his breeding. He'll choose me. I know. Don Greco's expression carried something that might have been regret in a man capable of that emotion. And that's why I'll have to kill you both. Because a son who'd sacrifice his empire for love is useless to me. Better to start over. To build something new with someone who understands that power requires sacrifice. He gestured. The bodyguards grabbed Alex's arms. She fought reflexively, but they were professionals, stronger, trained. They lifted her like she weighed nothing, and moved toward a door she hadn't noticed, hidden in the paneling, leading somewhere she knew she wouldn't survive. My son will come for you. Don Greco's voice followed her. He'll bring weapons and rage and whatever remnants of honor he's clinging to. And when he does, I'll show him what happens to Grecos, who forget that family is everything, that loyalty is absolute, that weakness gets you killed. They dragged her through the hidden door, down stairs that descended into darkness, into the kind of basement where screams went unheard and bodies disappeared without a trace. And somewhere above, in a car outside, Mattia Greco was realizing his father had always been hunting him. The black hood came off in a room that smelled like blood and bleach. Alex's vision adjusted slowly to fluorescent lights that hummed with the kind of frequency that made your teeth ache. Concrete walls, metal table, chair bolted to the floor where they'd strapped her wrists and ankles. Every crime show cliché made real in a space designed specifically for this purpose. 2 guards stood by the door, different men than the ones who'd grabbed her upstairs. These had the dead eyes of people who'd done terrible things so many times they'd stopped registering as terrible. Just another day's work in the service of Don Greco's empire. Time passed. Alex couldn't tell how much. Long enough for her shoulders to ache from the position. Long enough for thirst to make her throat feel like sandpaper. Long enough to understand that making her wait was part of the psychological warfare. Then the door opened and Valentina Russo walked in. She looked immaculate. Cream-colored dress, hair perfect, makeup flawless. The kind of woman who belonged at charity galas and political fundraisers, not in a torture room. But the gun in her hand suggested she was comfortable in both environments. You should have run. Valentina's voice carried genuine curiosity. That night at Il Santuario, when you saw what was about to happen, you should have taken the chaos and disappeared. Instead, you warned Mattia. Why? Alex said nothing. Her training from years of surviving said that engaging was giving them power, that silence was armor. Valentina moved closer. I've been researching you. Alex Madison, or should I say, Alexandra Jordan Madison, age 28. Former journalism major at Columbia until your brother died. Then you vanished. New name. New identity. New life built on being invisible. She traced the gun barrel along Alex's cheek. 5 years in hiding. 5 years running from shadows. Must have been exhausting. Not as exhausting as pretending to love a man you were ordered to murder. Valentina's smile was sharp. I wasn't pretending. I genuinely liked Mattia. He's intelligent, attractive, has that whole tortured prince trying to escape his father's shadow thing that certain women find compelling. Under different circumstances, I might have actually married him, but you tried to kill him instead. I followed orders. There's a difference. She sat on the edge of the table. My family's been allied with the Grecos for 3 generations. My father and Don Greco built this city's power structure together, shared resources, divided territory, created something bigger than either family could have alone. But lately, Mattia's been a problem, asking questions, suggesting changes, talking about going legitimate like that's something crime families actually do. So Don Greco ordered his own son's death. Not death. Transformation. Valentina corrected gently. The attack at Il Santuario was supposed to fail. Mattia was supposed to survive and realize that mercy is weakness, that the old ways exist because they work, that trying to be better than your breeding just gets you killed. But then you interfered. You gave him hope that fighting his father was possible. That alliance with the right person could change his destiny. I showed him the truth about who Don Greco really is. You made him weak. Valentina stood. And weakness in an heir is a disease that spreads. First, it's ethical objections to how business is conducted. Then it's questioning the family's methods. Eventually, it's full betrayal, turning evidence over to authorities, dismantling decades of carefully constructed power. Don Greco couldn't allow that. Alex tested her restraints. The chair didn't budge. So this is what? Motivation for Mattia to embrace his father's legacy? This is natural selection. Valentina checked her watch. In 5 minutes, Mattia will receive your location. He'll come charging in with whatever half-formed rescue plan he's concocted. Don Greco will give him a choice. Kill you himself to prove his loyalty, or watch his father do it while he realizes he's not strong enough to stop it. Either way, you die. The only question is whether Mattia survives the lesson. He'll kill Don Greco. Alex's voice was certain. The moment he gets the chance. You've underestimated what he's willing to sacrifice. Have we? Valentina's smile widened. Because from where I'm standing, you're the only leverage that matters. Mattia's spent his entire life trying to earn his father's approval, while simultaneously hating everything the man represents. He's torn between duty and desire, between being the heir or being his own man. You made him believe he could have both, that he could inherit the empire and transform it into something clean. He can. No, he can't. Because empires built on blood stay bloody. You can't wash away 40 years of violence with good intentions. She moved toward the door. I almost feel sorry for you. You seem like a decent person. Smart, brave. Exactly the kind of woman who'd save a stranger because it was the right thing to do. But decent people don't survive in our world. They get used, broken, discarded. By morning, you'll just be another body in Don Greco's ledger. The door closed behind her. The lock clicked. The guards resumed their positions. Alex sat in the silence and thought about Noah, about whether he'd felt this kind of fear in his final moments, whether he'd known death was coming or if Don Greco's bullet had been a surprise, whether dying knowing you'd fought for truth was comfort or just another way of acknowledging defeat. Her wrists were bleeding where the restraints cut into skin. Her shoulders screamed from the position, but her mind stayed sharp, calculating, looking for angles. The room had one door, 2 guards, concrete walls that wouldn't break, but the ceiling was drop tile, old construction, the kind that might have crawl spaces above it. Not much of a plan, but something was better than waiting for death. She started working the restraints, small movements that the guards wouldn't notice, testing which direction offered the most give, feeling for any weakness in metal or bolt or chair construction. Minutes crawled past. Her hands went numb. Blood made the restraints slippery. But slowly, impossibly slowly, she felt something shift. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in half a second later. Dim red glow that turned everything the color of arterial spray. The guards moved immediately. One to the door, one toward her, both drawing weapons. An explosion somewhere above shook dust from the ceiling. Gunfire followed, shouting. The sound of something large and heavy hitting the ground. Mattia had arrived. The guard nearest Alex made a mistake. He came close to check her restraints. Close enough that when she swung her head forward with all her strength, her forehead connected with his nose with a crunch that felt like victory and sounded like breaking cartilage. He staggered. She yanked hard on the restraints and felt the bolt in the chair give way. Her right hand came free. She grabbed the guard's weapon as he fell, her fingers closing around metal still warm from his grip. The second guard was already turning, already raising his gun, already squeezing the trigger. Alex threw herself sideways. The chair, still attached to her left wrist and both ankles, crashed to the floor with her. The bullet sparked off concrete where her head had been a second before. She fired blind. 3 shots that went wide but bought her precious seconds. The guard dove for cover behind the metal table. She used those seconds to yank at the remaining restraints, feeling skin tear, not caring, needing mobility more than she needed blood staying inside her body. The bolt on her left wrist gave. Then her ankles. She rolled behind an overturned shelf as return fire chewed through the space she'd occupied. The emergency lighting made everything shadows and red illumination, made depth perception a guess, made every movement feel like gambling with death. The The door burst open. Marco appeared, weapon drawn, face grim. He fired twice. The guard behind the table went down. Then Marco was pulling Alex to her feet, pressing a knife into her hand. Mattia's upstairs, fighting through to Don Greco's office. His voice was clipped, professional. You need to move, now. How many? Too many. Don Greco had reinforcements waiting. This whole thing was a trap. He pushed her toward the door. Go. I'll cover your exit. They moved into a hallway that looked like a war zone. Bodies on the ground, blood on the walls. The sharp chemical smell of gunfire hanging in air that tasted like violence. Somewhere above, more explosions. The building shaking like it was coming apart. Alex followed Marco through corridors that twisted in ways designed to disorient. Past rooms she didn't want to think about the purpose of. Upstairs slick with something dark and wet. Her bare feet left bloody prints. Her head rang from where she'd headbutted the guard. Her hands shook with adrenaline and fear, and the terrible exhilaration of still being alive. They emerged into what had been the restaurant's kitchen. Now it was a combat zone. Overturned equipment. Shattered glass. 3 bodies in Greco family colors and 2 in Russo colors. The war between families playing out in real time with kitchen knives and bullets. Through there. Marco pointed to a door. Service stairs. They'll take you to the main level. Find Mattia. Get him out. This building's coming down. What about you? I'm buying you time. He checked his weapon. Tell Mattia. Tell him Antonio would be proud. Then he was gone, moving back toward the sounds of gunfire with the kind of courage that came from having something worth dying for. Alex ran. Up the service stairs, her lungs burning, her feet leaving blood trails. Every step a prayer that she'd reach Mattia before Don Greco did whatever he'd planned as his final lesson. She emerged into the restaurant's main level. The elegant space she'd walked through an hour ago was destroyed, tables overturned, chandeliers shattered, the beautiful artwork riddled with bullet holes, bodies scattered like broken dolls, Greco soldiers, Russo soldiers, people whose only crime was eating breakfast in the wrong place. And at the far end, through the smoke and chaos, she saw him. Mattia stood before a set of double doors that probably led to Don Greco's private office. His disguise was gone. His face set in lines of absolute determination. Blood streaked his jacket, his or someone else's. Alex couldn't tell. He held a gun in one hand and something that looked like an explosive device in the other. Mattia. Her voice cut through the chaos. He turned. Relief flashed across his face for half a second before his mask of control slammed back down. Alex, you need to get out, now. This building is coming down. I know, Marco told me. She crossed to him, stepping over debris and bodies and the shattered remnants of the morning. We leave together or not at all. My father's inside. His voice was flat. This ends today. I'm not walking away while he's still breathing. Then we end it together. She took his free hand. Like we agreed. For Noah, for Antonio, for everyone. The double doors exploded outward. Don Greco emerged through smoke and splintered wood like a demon summoned from fire. He looked untouched. Immaculate. His suit, still perfect. His expression carrying that same cold assessment it always did. Behind him, Valentina Russo appeared. And behind her, men in tactical gear. Professional killers. The kind of backup that suggested this confrontation had been orchestrated as carefully as everything else Don Greco did. My son, the Don's voice carried across the ruined restaurant. You've made quite a mess. This building's been in the family for 40 years. Your grandfather opened this restaurant with money from our first successful operation. And you're burning it down for what? A woman you've known for less than a day? I'm burning it down because it's built on corpses. Mattia raised his gun. Because every brick represents someone you killed or corrupted or destroyed. Because I'm tired of pretending that legacy matters more than morality. Morality. Don Greco smiled. The last refuge of the weak. Your mentor Antonio used that word too, right before I put a bullet in his head. Did you know he begged? At the end? All his philosophies about honor and legitimate business died the moment he realized I was going to kill him. He reverted to pure animal survival instinct. Just like you will. I'm not Antonio. Mattia's voice stayed level. And I'm not you. I'm the thing that happens when your teachings collide with your failures. When the son you raised to be ruthless realizes that ruthlessness can cut both ways, then prove it. Don Greco spread his arms. Shoot me. End this. Show me you have the strength to kill your own father. Show me you're capable of the violence necessary to hold this empire together. Mattia's finger tightened on the trigger. But first, Don Greco continued, let me show you what that violence costs. He nodded to Valentina. She raised her weapon and fired. The bullet took Alex in the shoulder. She felt the impact before the pain. A sledgehammer blow that spun her sideways. Then her nervous system caught up and agony exploded through her body like lightning made solid. She hit the ground. Blood spread across the floor beneath her. Her vision blurred. Through the haze, she saw Mattia's face transform from controlled fury into something primal. Something that looked like grief weaponized. Now, Don Greco's voice came from very far away. Make your choice, my son. Kill me and she bleeds out while you do. Or drop your weapon and beg me to call a doctor. Either way, you lose. Either way, you learn that love is the weakness that gets everyone killed. Alex tried to speak, tried to tell Mattia to shoot, to finish it, to not let her death be meaningless. But her voice wouldn't work. Her body felt like it was made of ice, and fire, and pain. Mattia looked at her. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Alex saw his decision crystallize. Saw him understand the same truth she'd learned 5 years ago when Noah died. Sometimes survival meant sacrifice. And sometimes the only way to win was to refuse to play by your enemy's rules. He dropped the gun, raised the explosive device he'd been holding, and smiled at his father with something that looked like peace. You taught me that power is control. His voice was steady. That the man who cares about nothing is the man who wins. That emotional attachment is fatal in our world. You were right. So I'm going to show you what happens when someone finally internalizes that lesson completely. He pressed the trigger. The explosion was smaller than Alex expected, controlled, precise. It took out the support columns beneath Don Greco's feet, and nothing else. The floor collapsed. The Don fell through smoke and rubble into whatever basement level existed below. Valentina fired at Mattia. He moved with inhuman speed, grabbed Alex, rolled them both behind an overturned table. Return fire came from somewhere. Salvatore's team, Alex realized, finally reaching them. The tactical gear soldiers engaged. The restaurant became a battlefield. Stay with me. Mattia's hands pressed against her shoulder, his touch gentle despite the chaos. Alex, look at me. Stay present. Did you? Her voice came out wet. Did you kill him? I don't know. I don't care. We're leaving. Now. He lifted her like she weighed nothing. His strength surprising given he'd been fighting for the last hour. Salvatore, cover! They moved. Through smoke and gunfire. Past bodies and rubble. Mattia's people formed a protective wedge. The Russo soldiers fell back under sustained fire. The building groaned around them like a dying animal. They emerged into daylight. The street was chaos. Police sirens approaching. Civilians running. The restaurant belching smoke from a dozen broken windows. Mattia kept moving, kept carrying her, kept putting distance between them and the burning building. A car appeared, Salvatore at the wheel. Mattia pushed Alex into the back seat and climbed in after her. The vehicle peeled out before the door fully closed. Hospital, Alex managed. Safe house first. Mattia stripped off his jacket, wadded it against her shoulder. We go to a hospital, and police get involved. Questions get asked. People die from administrative complications. I have a doctor who won't ask questions. Your father is either dead or will wish he was when I find him. Mattia's voice was ice. But right now, you're bleeding in my arms and that's all that matters. Everything else is secondary. Alex's vision was graying at the edges. She tried to focus on his face, on the fear there despite his controlled voice, on the way his hands shook slightly as they maintained pressure on her wound. I'm sorry. The words came out slurred. I should have been faster. Should have seen Valentina's angle. You survived my father's trap. He leaned close, his forehead touching hers. You survived because you're stronger than anyone I've ever met. So stay strong for 10 more minutes. Just 10 more minutes until we reach the doctor. Can you do that? Noah. She couldn't finish the thought. Her brother's face swam in her vision. His smile, his laugh, the way he'd always believed that truth mattered more than safety. Noah would be proud of you. Mattia's voice cracked. He'd be proud that you finished what he started, that you fought monsters and survived, that you're still here despite everything they did to stop you. So stay here. With me. Don't you dare die after everything we've been through. The car moved through streets Alex didn't recognize. Her consciousness flickered, in and out, moments of clarity interspersed with darkness. She remembered arriving at a building, being carried upstairs, a room with medical equipment, a woman with efficient hands and no questions cutting away her shirt, the sharp pain of a needle, someone saying the bullet went through clean, missed the bone, she'll live if we control the bleeding. She remembered Mattia's hand holding hers through all of it, never letting go, anchoring her to consciousness through sheer force of will. She remembered waking in a bed that wasn't hers, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked the city, her shoulder bandaged and throbbing but no longer bleeding, and Mattia asleep in a chair beside her, his hand still holding hers, his face exhausted and beautiful, and marked with a pain that went deeper than physical injury. Alex tried to sit up. Her body protested with a wave of agony that made her gasp. Mattia woke instantly, his eyes finding hers with desperate intensity. Don't move. Doctor said you need 48 hours of rest minimum. The bullet tore through muscle but missed anything vital. You'll heal, but you need to give your body time. His hand cupped her face. How's the pain? Manageable. It was a lie but necessary. Your father? Missing. The explosion took out the floor but there's no body. Either he escaped through tunnels I didn't know about or someone pulled him out before the building collapsed. Mattia's jaw tightened. Police are treating the whole thing as a gang war. Multiple casualties, both families taking losses. The media's spinning it as traditional organized crime violence. Business as usual in New York. The files, Noah's evidence, already distributed. Salvatore sent copies to the FBI, the State Attorney General, 3 major newspapers, and a dozen international news organizations. By tonight, every transaction will be public. Every connection exposed. Every corrupt politician will be answering questions they can't lie their way out of. He smiled grimly. We may not have killed my father, but we destroyed his empire. That's something. Alex closed her eyes, felt the weight of 5 years lift slightly. Noah would have wanted it this way. Evidence and exposure rather than just violence. Your brother was smarter than me. Mattia's thumb traced her cheekbone. I wanted blood. Wanted to kill my father with my own hands. Wanted revenge to be personal and immediate. But you showed me a better way. A way that burns down the system instead of just one man. I didn't show you anything. You chose it yourself. I chose you. His voice dropped. When my father gave me that ultimatum, shoot him while you bled out or save you, I chose you. I broke 40 years of conditioning, decades of teaching that loyalty to family was absolute. I chose a woman I'd known for a day over the empire I'd been raised to inherit. Does that make me weak? It makes you human. Alex opened her eyes. Something your father forgot how to be. Mattia leaned in, kissed her forehead, her temple, her lips with aching gentleness, like she was something precious and fragile instead of something that had survived bullets and blood. The FBI raided Senator Russo's office 2 hours ago. His voice stayed soft against her skin. They found evidence connecting him to 14 political assassinations over 20 years. He's in custody. Valentina's gone underground. The Costa syndicate's scrambling to cut their losses. And every major crime family in the city is trying to figure out what happens now that the old structure's collapsed. What does happen? I don't know. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I could try to seize power. Use the chaos to establish myself as the new dawn. Rebuild my father's empire with different principles. Or I could walk away. Liquidate the family assets. Use the money to fund legitimate businesses and philanthropic ventures. Become the man Antonio thought I could be. What do you want? I want to watch the sunrise without calculating which enemies might attack during daylight. His honesty was brutal. I want to cook pasta without wondering if it's poisoned. I want to sleep beside you without expecting assassins to come through the door. I want a life that isn't measured in body counts and betrayals. That's not the life you've been trained for. No, but it's the life I'm choosing anyway. He stood, moving to the window. The city sprawled below them, Manhattan in afternoon light, beautiful and terrible and completely indifferent to the violence that shaped it. The Greco family's finished. Whether my father survived or not doesn't matter. His empire's exposed, his alliances broken, his carefully constructed power structure dismantled. I could try to salvage something from the ruins, or I could let it burn. And the people who worked for him? The soldiers and the associates and everyone whose livelihood depended on the family business? I've set up a fund, legitimate businesses they can transition into, job training, educational opportunities, an exit strategy for anyone who wants out of this life. Mattia turned back to her. Some will take it, some won't. Some will try to kill me for destroying what they thought was their future. But I can't control that. I can only control my own choices. Alex watched him. This man who'd been raised as a weapon and was trying to become something gentler, who'd lost everything, father, empire, identity, and was somehow still standing, who looked at her like she was the only thing in the world worth protecting. What about us? Her voice came out smaller than intended. What happens to the Waitress and the Mafia heir after the war ends? That depends. He moved back to her bedside, sat carefully on the edge of the mattress. Are you still interested in finishing your brother's work? Because there are a dozen other corrupt families we could expose. 100 political connections that need investigating. Years of work turning over rocks and documenting what crawls out. That sounds dangerous. Absolutely. We'd be making enemies everywhere. Probably get shot at regularly. Definitely live looking over our shoulders. His mouth curved into something that might become a smile. But we'd be doing it together. And we'd be fighting for something that matters. That seems like enough. Alex reached up with her good arm, pulled him down until his lips met hers. The kiss tasted like blood and smoke, and the kind of desperate hope that came from surviving the unsurvivable. When they broke apart, she whispered against his mouth. Noah spent his life trying to expose corruption alone. It got him killed. Maybe together we'll actually succeed. Or we'll die trying. Mattia's forehead rested against hers. Either way, we go down swinging. 3 months later, Alex stood at Noah's grave in a Queens cemetery. The headstone was simple. Just his name, his dates, and a quote he'd loved. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. She laid a white rose on the ground. The morning was cool and clear. The kind of day that made New York feel almost peaceful despite the chaos simmering beneath its surface. I finished it. She spoke to the granite like Noah could hear. Your investigation, your evidence, everything you died protecting. Senator Russo's awaiting trial. 16 other politicians have been indicted. The Costa Syndicate's operations in New York are crippled. And Don Greco, wherever he is, his empire's ashes. Footsteps approached. She didn't turn. Knew the sound of Mattia's gait by now. The way he moved like violence in a suit, even when he was trying to be gentle. He stood beside her in silence for a moment. Then he placed something on the headstone. His father's signet ring, the symbol of the Greco family. Heavy gold marked with the family crest. I found this in the ruins of the restaurant. His voice was quiet. Proof he was there when the building came down. The FBI's officially listing him as dead. No body recovered, but enough evidence to close the case. You think he's really gone? I think monsters don't die easy. Mattia's hand found hers. But I also think it doesn't matter. Dead or hiding, he's finished. His empire's gone. His legacy's corruption documented for history. Whether he's breathing or not, he's lost. Alex squeezed his fingers. Noah would have appreciated the poetic justice, the son destroying the father's empire with the evidence the father tried to bury. Do you think he'd forgive me? For what my family did to him? I think he'd recognize that you're not your father's sins. She finally looked at Mattia, at the man who'd saved her life and destroyed his legacy, and was somehow still figuring out how to be human. He'd see what I see. Someone trying to build something better from the ruins. Mattia opened a velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple silver band engraved with a rose. I know it's fast. I know we met under the worst possible circumstances. I know that logically, we barely know each other. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I don't want to own you. Don't want to possess you. I want to build something clean with you. Something your brother would recognize as worth dying for. Alex stared at the ring, at the man offering it, at the choice between safety and the kind of dangerous love that transformed everything. She thought about Noah, about 5 years of hiding, about the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become, about walking into Il Santuario as invisible help, and walking out as someone who'd burned down empires. I thought you'd never ask. Her voice came out thick with emotion. He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been made specifically for this moment, for this choice, for this life they were about to build from ashes and evidence and stubborn refusal to let corruption win. They stood at Noah's grave while the morning brightened around them. Two people who'd started as enemies and become something indefinable, something that looked like love but tasted like justice, something worth fighting for. The Noah Madison Initiative launches next month. Alex leaned into Mattia's shoulder. Full funding for investigative journalism, protection for whistleblowers, legal support for people exposing corruption. Everything Noah wanted to do, we're making real, and we're doing it together. Mattia kissed the top of her head. No more fighting alone. No more sacrificing ourselves for abstract ideals. We protect each other, and we burn down anyone who tries to stop us. That's very romantic in a terrifying sort of way. I'm a work in progress. His arms wrapped around her. Give me time. Eventually I might learn how to be romantic without the death threats. 6 months after that, they stood on a rooftop garden at sunset. The city spread before them in gold and shadow. Mattia was cooking, actual cooking, following a recipe Antonio had written down years ago. Alex watched him move around their makeshift kitchen with the kind of domestic contentment that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The power, the fear, the empire. Only when it's too quiet. He added herbs to whatever was simmering on the portable stove. Only when I forget what it cost to walk away. Then I look at you and remember that some things are worth more than empires. That's definitely growth. She moved to him, slipped her arms around his waist. The Mattia I met would never have admitted that. The Mattia you met was dying by inches and calling it strength. He turned in her embrace. You showed me the difference between surviving and living, between power and peace, between being my father's weapon and being my own man. I didn't show you anything. You chose it. I chose you. His lips found hers. Every day, every moment. Every time the old life tries to pull me back, I choose you instead. They ate dinner as the sun set, talked about the latest exposés from the initiative, about the politicians scrambling to distance themselves from the Greco-Russo scandal, about the 3 other crime families they'd quietly begun investigating, about building something that mattered from the ruins of what had been. Later, in the dark warmth of their bed, Alex traced the scars on Mattia's chest. Each one a story, each one a lesson in survival, each one proof that he'd lived through things that should have killed him. Do you think this is what Noah wanted? She whispered. When he started investigating, did he imagine something like this? I think he wanted truth to matter more than power. Mattia's fingers threaded through her hair. He wanted a world where corruption couldn't hide behind money and connections, where justice meant something beyond whatever the powerful decided it meant. We're building that. One investigation at a time, one exposed politician at a time, one dismantled crime family at a time. It's slow work. The best things are, he pulled her closer, Fast burns hot and dies quick. We're building something meant to outlast us. Something that'll still be fighting corruption long after we're gone. That's worth being patient for. Alex closed her eyes, let herself feel the warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart, the peace that came from choosing each other despite everything that said they shouldn't. Once, she'd whispered for him to run. Now they walked together, toward a life they'd built from ashes and evidence and stubborn love that refused to quit. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge was peace. Sometimes the greatest victory was surviving long enough to see your enemies fall. Sometimes the best way to honor the dead was by living fiercely in the light they died trying to create. Alex thought about Noah, about what he'd say if he could see her now. Married to a reformed crime lord, running an investigative initiative funded by liquidated mafia assets. Fighting the same corruption he'd died exposing, but doing it with backup and weapons and the kind of dangerous love that transformed everything. She thought he'd approve. Or at least understand. The work wasn't finished. Might never be finished. There would always be more corruption to expose. More powerful people trying to escape consequences. More fights worth having. But for tonight, in the dark warmth of their rooftop sanctuary, Alex let herself simply be. Let herself exist in this moment of hard-won peace. Let herself love the man beside her without calculating the cost or measuring the risk. Tomorrow, they'd go back to war. Tonight, they'd remember what they were fighting for. Each other, justice, truth, the belief that some things were worth dying for, and even more worth living for. Outside, New York hummed with life. Millions of stories intersecting, millions of choices being made. Millions of people living in the spaces between corruption and justice, trying to survive in a city that ate the weak and crowned the ruthless. But on this rooftop, in this moment, two people who'd survived the unsurvivable held each other close and remembered that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys won. Not cleanly, not perfectly, not without scars and blood and sacrifice. But they won, and that had to be enough. It was enough. Thank you for staying until the end. That means more than you think. If this story touched something inside you, subscribe, like, and tell me what you felt in the comments. I read every single one. Because this isn't just storytelling, it's connection. And if you're ready for the next journey, don't wander too far. The next story is already waiting in the dark.